we decided to go to this temple. It's called the Radha Krishna Temple in Denver, and it's a Hare Krishna. This was the lowest point of my life, and I felt spiritually, physically, emotionally, psychologically dead. And instead of Krishna on the altar, Satan was sitting on the altar, and we were worshiping Satan. Everything about you changed. And he said the creepiest thing was that your eyes had changed from how they are now to these deep, dead, dark, black eyes. For some reason, just glanced over to my left and I saw Christ standing before me.
You are listening to The Catholic Wire.
In the last decades, many Catholics have experienced terrible moral persecution. Their faith, their traditions were taken away from the churches. Many have lived for many years ignorant of the deprivation they suffered. Some are still going through that painful and at once beautiful process of rediscovering the Catholic faith. For the encouragement of those still in that journey, faithful Catholics have shared with us their challenges, trials, and blessings. This is the story of their journey back to the faith.
Hello and welcome to The Catholic Wire. This is your host, Father Carlos Cepeda, and I'm here joined by my friend Colin with another episode of Back to the Faith with our new stage, brand new stage, using it for the first time, and really enjoying his presence since he will be moving soon to Germany. So Colin, thank you very much for being here.
Father, thank you very much for having me.
Really appreciate it. We met recently, we've been talking more recently, I would say, like maybe just a year ago that I came here to the parish. Mm-hmm. But he's been always very helpful, and we've had a good couple conversations, I'd say. You know, good
Sure.
relation, I would say.
Yeah. We have. We've definitely enjoyed having you here. We've all benefited very much, so thank you, Father.
Same thing, when our tree almost fell down and you
Yeah.
that was very useful.
Yeah.
No, and it's been nice. There's a lot of things that I obviously can't share here in the video, but of all the things that are going on in your life are just really great, and I'm really happy for you. That's part of the stuff that I cut later. So, as you know, this episode, this kind of program is for us to share what our story has been. We had a nice conversation where I actually told him my story. That's how I trick people into coming here. I told them my story first, and then he told me his story, and it's a really good one. So we can begin from the beginning, I guess. Where were you born?
Sure.
How was your family life growing up?
Sure.
Your
So
childhood.
I'm from here, Colorado. I was born and raised just south of Denver in a suburb called Centennial. So I lived there for the first 4 years of my life, and then we actually moved to England just outside of London for 2 years, and then came back to the same neighborhood in Centennial. So I've been here most of my life, and I grew up in the Novus Ordo. I went to, it's called Most Precious Blood in southeast Denver, and I found out later when I came back to the Novus Ordo that apparently it's one of the most liberal parishes in the Diocese of Denver. So,
Really?
which I didn't know as a child or anything. My parents were not liberal politically. So, but anyway, yeah, I went to school there from preschool until 5th grade, and then I moved to All Souls. It's another school in Inglewood, and it was more conservative there. But still, the Novus Ordo education is, I would say, nominally Catholic. You get 1 hour of religion class. Maybe I think it might have been even 3 times a week, not even every day. Mm-hmm. So the catechism wasn't great, and then it was kind of a typical Novus Ordo upbringing, essentially. So then, growing up, I always believed in God, and we said some prayers, but it wasn't the focal point of my life. You know, it wasn't essential. Religion wasn't essential. So then, by the age of 14, you know, I was I was not a well-behaved child. Starting in probably the 4th or 5th grade, started messing around, being a boy, and then started getting more and more mischievous, and then it turned actually to drugs through some friends from school, from my Nova Sorda school. So I started using marijuana at the age of 14, right after my 14th birthday in 8th grade.
That's something that, you know, is actually, unfortunately, quite common.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
in the day and age to see that. It's just, I've talked to some kids that are very young and they've been doing it for a while.
Younger and younger.
And
it
the
seems.
problem is that
Yeah.
people tell you that there's nothing wrong with it. You know,
Right.
you ask and people will say, and that was one kid I had this conversation with him because I was trying to tell him you got to stop, and he would say, well, no, nothing happens, and I'm like, no,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he would say, well, he'd say, I've done it for so many years and there's nothing
Look
wrong
at
with
me.
me. And I would say, like, you think there's nothing
You
wrong with
think
you?
so.
Like, I can
Yes,
see you.
yeah.
You know, so definitely, yeah. Sorry, but go ahead.
No, that's fine. So yeah, and then, well, going along with that, don't let anybody tell you that marijuana is not a gateway drug. It absolutely is. I mean, ask anybody who does use marijuana frequently or has before. Ask them if they've gone to anything further, if they've tried anything else, because that's certainly what happened with me. So by the age of 15, I started using psychedelics for the first time. And then there was some family tragedy, some difficulties, hardships that I wasn't prepared to deal with, and that drove me to an indifference, and then later an agnosticism, and then eventually atheism. So that was at the age of 15. So 16, you know, I was using drugs frequently, you know, smoking marijuana, and at this point, I didn't really care, you know, about religion or any of the deeper questions of life.
So for how long do you think this lasted in your young years? You know, how many years were you in this? Were there friends that were kind of helping you go down in this path? You know, like people that were.
I would say I was the trailblazer, actually. That I was the most mischievous, and
I can relate to that.
I was I was the leader. You know, I was definitely the leader, and I introduced a lot of my friends to these bad things. So, I was a bad friend, and I had bad friends, and we made each other worse. And so yeah, this went on for 6 years. So from 14 to 20. So that was, and then at the end of high school, I was known as, I was a stoner in high school. I was one of the kids known as a stoner, you know, who was really into pot and stuff. So that was my identity. That was a huge part of my identity. And then some of the experiences from the psychedelics, really, it does shape your identity. Those crazy experiences you have, they have a lasting effect, and they have spiritual consequences. Absolutely. So now this is 2015, and I am going to school my first semester at Metropolitan State University in Denver. And I was studying for horticulture, but I was going to do the first 2 years at this university because it was less expensive. So just get the basic credits out of the way. So I was living with my friend from high school. We had a dorm there together, and it was student housing. And, you know, we were partying, drinking, and all that, you know. And before that, I thought, you know, this is what it's all about. And I couldn't wait to get to college and start partying because, you know, that's the stigma it has. And I thought, oh, that'll make me happier, and it'll be great, you know.
That's what they say, right? College is meant to be party. It's like
yes.
nobody goes there to study anymore or to build yourself up. which was the purpose of the university before. Sorry to interrupt.
Right,
again, but,
sure.
I remember when I was going to college in Mexico, it's not even that bad because in Mexico, the big problem here is that you're living there. And maybe we can use this parenthesis, for Catholic parents to kind of say, if you can avoid your child living at the college premises.
Absolutely.
That's just terrible, but it's the worst idea possible. Get a bunch of teenagers together without supervision at an adult age. But in Mexico, it wasn't even that. You wouldn't live there. But even then, I remember talking to my dad once, and we came up to the conclusion of me going to college in the nighttime, for it's like night college. It was the same university, but you had 3 schedules. You had the morning, the evening, and the night. And I would go to the nighttime because that was actually where you had all the guys that were actually wanting to learn. And they were very serious. Everybody there was like, I don't care about partying.
They were paying their way through.
Yeah.
Usually older, not 18.
Yeah, guys that have a family, that they already have a job.
Really serious.
And it was really good because you would learn more from them most of the times, and nobody messed around in class. I mean, if you messed around, they would actually kick you out.
That happened to me. Yeah, the older guys got really mad at me and my friend. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So did you ever make it to college, or did you actually start college?
Yes. Yep. I was going to school while I was living there. So, doing that, I guess, unfortunately, the typical freshman party life and stuff, and I was still getting good grades. I was still doing my assignments and taking academics seriously, thankfully. But my friend and I, we had a big falling out, and the tension of us living together, it just wasn't working. So the tensions rose so quickly and highly that I couldn't stay there anymore. Neither one of us could. And I just remember one night, I was just kind of at a rock bottom, for the past, 6 or 5 years, looking for fulfillment, joy and peace and happiness in all the wrong places, and that was through substances, through material possessions and all that sorts of things. So sensual gratification and things were just not going well. And I knew that I wanted more, and I knew that I needed more. And so I thought, okay, then I need to look towards the spiritual aspect of life, metaphysical, I hope that there's something more than what I'm doing right now. And so I don't know how I stumbled. Go ahead.
At this moment, two questions, I guess. Did you fall into depression would be one, and the other one would be, for what you told me, I mean, at this moment you still didn't believe in God, but you kind of thought, maybe I should look into that. Was it depression too, or?
At this point, I was a militant atheist. So I hated God. I hated Christianity. I thought it was a joke. But what was the other question? I'm sorry.
If there was depression?
Sure there was. Yeah, sure there was depression. Nothing. It wasn't so severe, but certainly. And that was good because I started looking, I started looking for more because what I was doing wasn't working to make me happy or fulfilled, that we're all searching for, to fill that void within our soul. So then one night I decided I don't know how I stumbled upon them, but they're called binaural beats. And it's these certain frequencies, wavelengths, so like 528 hertz, which is this certain frequency that apparently has healthful effects on your physiology. So
I've actually heard of that.
You've heard of that before? Okay, so and then 432 hertz is another one. Excuse me, and so
that's the frequency of the Catholic wire for whoever listens to it.
Yeah, that right there. That's fine. So, so I was just laying down in this apartment and started listening to this, and I had these physical sensations, sort of like a lightening of my body, and this sensation that I was kind of like a tube of toothpaste being rolled up essentially, and I felt. I felt these sensations that I was going to leave my body, and I took this for a deeply spiritual experience. understandably, because
That's all you have.
that's all I had, right? And I was searching desperately. I was desperate, but I didn't know it. And so when something comes along like that, you're going to grasp onto it. You're going to cling to it and make something more of what it really is. So anyway, that was kind of the first experience with that. And that kind of introduced me into spiritual, new age, let's just say new age spiritual practices. And so then I moved back with my parents, and life resumed pretty much as normal. And then, so now it's 2016, and it's the fall of 2016. So I was on campus, and this was, my third semester there. I was on campus and walking, and at Metro they have a lot of different religious affiliations that are allowed to represent themselves. So you'll have like a soapbox Protestant preacher, or you'll have, who I stumbled upon was the Hare Krishna Hindus. And they had a table in the center of campus, and he had these books, and one of them was called the Bhagavad Gita, and I just stopped to talk to him, probably because I was probably trying to get in an argument with him about God or something, and trying to disprove him, because I was very arrogant and argumentative. And he opened it up to me, and he showed me some of the artwork, the ancient Hindu artwork, and explained to me this book and what it was, and I was just attracted to that. There seems to be this huge movement of suburban Americans who are really attracted to Eastern philosophies and religions, artwork and stuff like that, because it's just so different and exotic. And we kind of immediately attach that it's spiritual to it, a spiritual significance. And so I bought the book, and I started reading it, and it started talking about God and who they call Krishna, who they believe is God. But I put the book down almost immediately, because at that point I didn't believe in God. I thought it was hogwash, nonsense. So I put it down. And then several months later, probably in February of 2017, or earlier, maybe, I for some reason, I just picked the book back up again. I saw it on my bookshelf, and I picked it up and started reading it. And just like that, I started believing everything. I really did. I started believing everything it was telling me. I didn't know I had reached this point, but I did, that I knew I needed to make a change, that the way I was living wasn't sustainable, and it was going to drive me to despair. Really heavy drug abuse, only getting worse, and getting worse and worse, and then starting to get more into the occult practices with one of my friends, doing things like astral projection, looking into that, or tarot cards, clairvoyance, stuff like that. He was a big influence on me. And it was my life was just getting darker and darker. And I thought that this was a way out. I didn't know it explicitly in my mind. I never said that, or never had the explicit thought, but looking back, that's what it was. And just reaching out for anything. And that was there. That was what was in front of me. And so I picked it up and just started reading and believing everything. And then I met this girl that I started dating. I'll say her name is Michelle. So yeah, we had started dating each other, and I was reading this book, and it was really influencing my thinking and my aspirations. And I asked her about it. She said, "Oh yeah, I have that same book." And I said, "No way, really cool." That was a big coincidence, but I didn't want it to be a coincidence. I wanted it to be something much more, And so I stressed her pretty heavily to start reading it, because I thought it was the truth. And I, was pretty forcible in saying that you should read this. And so that was in March of 2017. And then come May of 2017, I think it was the 1st of May 2017, we decided to go to this temple. It's called the Radha Krishna Temple in Denver. And it's a Hare Krishna.
Taking notes here to go exercise all those places.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. I should back up and say that I was reading this material and slowly being influenced, not slowly, quite rapidly being influenced more and more by it. And my parents knew who the Hare Krishnas were. they have a terrible reputation, and rightfully so. They're a nuisance and certainly a cult. And they were obviously skeptical, not skeptical, very
Worried,
dissuasive.
concerned.
They were trying to dissuade me, but in the most tactful way possible. You know, so to their credit, I'm glad that they did act the way that they did. I thought it was really prudent, because if they came down on me very hard about it, they knew that I would just go even, you know, I would butt heads and try to go even further. And so, you know, they were presenting material to me, apologetical material against Hare Krishna Hinduism, and I wasn't having it, you know. So we went to this temple in Denver, and I should preface what they believe. They believe that by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, that their souls will be released from the bondage of reincarnation, the cycle of reincarnation, and they will be united with the Godhead, Krishna. And so that is the purpose of their life, is that they believe this chanting, they reach enlightenment or spiritual perfection just through chanting.
Okay.
And so we go to this temple, and they're chanting and dancing. And now these monks, you know, they have their like orange robes on, and they have their shaved head with a little bit of hair right here. And these monks were white guys, probably from the age of 22 to 30, 35. So, and I'm assuming probably similar backgrounds with me. And what I saw there when they were chanting and dancing was ecstasy. They seemed ecstatic, right?
Hypnotism.
Exactly.
To some extent, I mean, yeah.
Exactly. No, it's certainly, or worse, possession. And it brought me to tears, because they don't use any drugs. You're not allowed to drink. You even use caffeine. I don't think they eat meat. No, they don't eat meat either. So they use no substances to alter their state of consciousness. But I saw that they were so happy. And I just decided right then and there, that's what I want. I want to be happy. I want to be like them. And all they're doing is this, chanting this simple mantra. And if that gives them such joy and peace and ecstasy, then I need to pursue this. And I just decided right then and there that this is what I'm going to do. And so we started going to this temple during the week, that following week, going there, and we would stay there late at night. So it would be after school, and then after Michelle got off of work, and we would stay there very late. And so we would be eating food with them, and then we would like help with the dishes, and then they would tell us how special we were. They said, "We've never seen anybody like you before. You two are very special, and Krishna has, you know, great plans for you two." And that's typical indoctrination. And so we were staying up very late at night, staying at the temple, talking to these monks. And so then they introduced us. We went to the temple another day, and they were talking about this thing called japa meditation. And one of the monks was saying that it gave him a spiritual buzz. It's the mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, that they chant on these beads over and over and over. And they have this really weird bead pouch that they put their hand in. And he said that it gave him a spiritual buzz. And I had just stopped smoking marijuana and doing drugs. And so when he says it'll give you a buzz, I just immediately thought, oh, great, this is for me, you know? And so he said, you wake up in the middle of the night, early in the morning, and you go out while it's still dark outside, and you chant this mantra hundreds and hundreds of times. And so I think I did it 500 times, this mantra. And so we went outside, and pitch black outside, and we started chanting this mantra. And I came inside, and I felt like I was on cloud nine. It was this sensation that I had never experienced before. And so now that's going on, and my parents are still presenting material, to dissuade me. And it comes to May 12th, 2017. Actually, one really memorable time was we were, I don't know if you want to include this, but we were we went to their house and they do these chanting parties. And we went to this person's house and they had no furniture inside the house. There was nothing. And they just chant and they just bang on their drums and they chant. And that's all these people do. And then I looked we went and saw this one guy's room. And all he had was a mat, his bedroom. All he had was a mat on the floor and these like crystal pyramids surrounding his bed. And he told us this story about these gods appearing to him, and I think maybe even abducting him. These green gods coming in their UFOs to see him, or were they blue? I don't even know, but to come see him and communicate with him. And Michelle, she was terrified. Go ahead.
I had to ask. So these guys wouldn't do drugs?
No.
Okay. I don't want to interrupt. Finish the story. And
Sure. And when I told Michelle that, she was absolutely terrified, rightfully so. She still had her wits about her somewhat, you know. Mm-hmm. She was still really skeptical of this whole thing, but I was gung-ho, and she was terrified when I told her that. But I was so brainwashed and bad-willed at this point that I thought, no, they're good. I was telling her they're good. You know, those are the good gods and stuff. And that testimony right there is enough evidence for me to say that the whole UFO alien thing is demonic. I mean, I think they're demons.
That's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard that theory, but what I was going to say is that a lot of people think that, you know, false religions is just a man-made thing.
No.
And there's certainly a lot of demonic, and I've heard of other people that, especially in Hindu, that there were diabolical things, you know, that there's actually supernatural things that happen.
Yes.
And it would make perfect sense when you talk, for example, about the Aztecs and the Indians that were here before. The Spaniards would say that they actually had supernatural things going on, and that's why they believed it.
Absolutely.
But it was the devil, or I should say. I mean that. Oh, the whole thing is, doing trance, hypnotism, things that just, the devil, you can see his action in false religions because God acts in a way that is not sensitive. Mm-hmm. Our senses is the lowest part we have. So God usually, when he acts, is in a very higher way, usually through the intellect, through our will, in a very pure way.
Right.
And the devil can't do that, so the devil goes the other way around. He's through the senses, feel that, and you feel this and that.
Yes.
So, anyways, that's interesting. Okay, we just added a
we
new
just
point
solved
of controversy
the whole controversy.
Forget about the balloons.
Yeah. Yep. So, anyway, that's just a side note. But so it comes to May 12th, 2017, and I'm telling all these people at work. I was working for a landscape company at the time, and I'm telling all these people at work what I'm doing. I'm a Hare Krishna Hindu, and proselytizing to them and stuff. And they're like, "This kid's nuts." And I guess I had a bad day at work or whatever, and I was talking to my mom, and the conversation, it had escalated so quickly that I was ready to quit my job, drop out of school, and go become a monk at this temple for the rest of my life. This was only 12 days after going that first time. That's how quickly things progressed. And my parents, they just left in disarray. And I later found out that my mom and my dad, they went down to the park. They just went on a walk. And my mom just got on her knees and begged God not to let me go to this temple. And she begged Almighty God to not let this happen. And at that time, my friend called me, who we used to do the tarot readings and the astral projection and a lot of drugs together. He called me and said he admitted himself into a hospital for heroin withdrawals. So we decided to go see him, and this was later in the evening, decided to go see him. And we went there, and I brought my Hindu scriptures to, proselytize him. And there was this woman in the hospital room with him, and it was, I think, his half-sister's grandmother or something, the only good influence in his life. And so I was sitting there with, we'll say his name is David. and sitting with David. And I'm on the hospital, the cot with him, the bed, and I just said that I'm really happy for you, and I think God has a lot of plans. You know, when I say God, I mean Krishna, but I just said that, and she started referring to biblical things, alluding to biblical things, and then she started telling us about all these stories in her life, miraculous events in her life that she had witnessed, and so we were just making small talk, and I really believed her, and I know Michelle did too. We really believed her, but there was this one hang up, and that was Jesus Christ. I wasn't going to buy it, but then she said to me that that God had wonderful plans for her and I, but she said the only way to the Father is through His Son, Jesus Christ. And hearing the holy name of Jesus was like a ton of bricks hitting me in the chest. It was painful actually to hear the name of Jesus. And she just said that, you know, she looked me dead in the eye and said that to me. And I looked at Michelle, and we were flabbergasted, you know. We thought I had it all figured out, but this woman is telling me I'm wrong. And so I started pacing around this hospital room, becoming visibly anxious, and I just started thinking about Christ being God, the Redeemer, right? And it was like this sensation as though my mind was being rewound like a tape. And I was pacing back and forth in this room and getting visibly nervous, upset, and I could feel these energies leaving my body the more I thought of Christ. And so we're leaving the hospital, and she says, so you guys are coming to church with me tomorrow, right? And I said, well, sure, I guess. I mean, at that point I had no recourse to a better solution or anything to rebut her with. So I got into my car. This is late at night. I got into my car, and this was the lowest point of my life, and I felt spiritually, physically, emotionally, psychologically dead. I really did feel dead, and I just looked up to heaven and I said, Jesus Christ, if you're truly my Lord and Savior, please show me the truth. If you're truly God, please show me the truth. I have to know. I can't go on any further. Please show me the truth. And Michelle said the same prayer, the same thing as me. And I was driving home, and I came to a stop sign, and I was saying that prayer over and over again. And I came to a stop sign, and for some reason just glanced over to my left, and I saw Christ standing before me in just a glance, and I just looked away immediately. And at that very moment, I knew that I was worshiping false gods, breaking the first commandment. I knew that Christ was truly God, that my prayer was answered. And from that moment on, I knew that I had to be Christian. I knew it was the truth. And so we got back, and Michelle said that she had never remembered a single dream in her life, never remember having a single one. And she thought, well, if he's truly God, he could show me. And she said, well, Jesus Christ, if you're truly my Lord and Savior, please give me a dream tonight showing me the truth. And now I woke up a completely different person the next day, a completely different person. And I was cleaning out my car, and I said, Mom, I'm never going back to that temple. I'm not reading those books. And she just started weeping, bawling her eyes out. And then I came inside, and Michelle said, hey, I got a dream. And I said, really? Wow, okay, tell me. In disbelief. And she said, in this dream, it was you and I dancing and chanting and worshiping Krishna in the temple. And it was this view looking down on us. And she said, then later the view panned upward towards the altar, and instead of Krishna on the altar, Satan was sitting on the altar, and we were worshiping Satan. So that was our conversion. That's how we changed, and so we rounded up all these books, all of I had T-shirts and everything that I had from the temple. We just gathered up and threw it away. We should have burned it. I think I put a bunch of water in it, whatever, but got rid of it. And my dad said, this is the most amazing series of events I've seen in my life, the most amazing 24 hours I've seen elapse. And he said, Colin, over those 12 days, everything about you changed. From the way that you walked was different, the way that you spoke was different. And he said the creepiest thing was that your eyes had changed from how they are now to these deep, dead, dark, black eyes, like a void, nothing behind them. And actually, I later looked at a video that Michelle had recorded of me, and I could see, it was terrifying. She couldn't even look at the video. We couldn't look at it. She immediately deleted it. It was so terrifying to look at me. And I truly believe that to some degree I was possessed. I really do. So then actually that same day I saw a Hare Krishna woman at breakfast, and I could see her eyes. I looked over and immediately knew. Wow. And I went up to her and I told her what had just happened. And I said that the only way to the Father is through Jesus Christ. And so that was a wonderful day. But so then I started going to non-denominational churches. I had a friend, childhood friend, who was a Christian, and he was going to this church. It was kind of charismatic, black Protestant church, and so we started going there.
I do have to say before you get into that, because I don't want to miss this part. The prayers of a mom.
Precisely, yeah.
The prayers of a mother, they're so powerful.
I forgot that I would wake up in the morning and I would see my mom praying her rosary, and she gave me this look like it was for me, and I knew it was, you know. Yeah. So, and truly, I do accredit my conversion to the power of the rosary and the Blessed Virgin Mary. Yeah. So,
but you know, I can relate too, because you know, for me also it was the prayers of my mom, and you know, she was praying and praying until God came over and said, yes. Okay, stop that, because she's asking me for it. Right. You know. So you started going to a non-denominational church.
Started going there, and that was the summer of 2017. And then I left to go to Colorado State University in Fort Collins. I left to go to school there to finish my degree. And the first night I was there, I actually met a friend from high school who had just moved there too. And I was wearing this crucifix that my mom had got me. And we were out on the balcony, and his neighbor came out to the balcony, and he said, "Oh, I like your crucifix." He said, "Why don't you come to Mass with me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, okay." And that was so then that Sunday, that was the first time I had returned to the Novus Ordo in quite a while. And after that experience, I just decided I was going to be Catholic. So I called up my mom and my nan and said, "Hey guys, I'm Catholic again." You know, they said, "Oh, wonderful, great." So little did I know that this was going to start the beginning of another long journey, right? So I embraced that, and then I started really catechizing myself, and it was everything, you know, going from the life that I lived before. Catholicism was everything to me, and I absolutely loved it, and reading and learning, I couldn't get enough. So it was taking up most of my free time, thankfully, really thankfully, and started catechizing myself, reading Lives of the Saints, stuff like that, just getting more acquainted with in the spiritual life of a Catholic and the prayers and whatnot. So yeah, continuing to go to the Novus Ordo and getting involved with Catholic University groups there. It was called the Fellowship of Catholic University Students Focus. And there was a lot of students at this parish, so that was good to network with people and make friendships. So then I was introduced to the Latin Mass for the first time by one of their missionaries. And at first it didn't hit me too much. I was lost the whole time. It didn't make too much of an impression, but I was certainly interested. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before, and I knew, because I'd always heard my mom and my Nana talking about Vatican II, not in a good light. And I thought, well, this was before Vatican II, so I should probably, see what's up with this and what the deal is. So then that was November 2017, and then I started going to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, the priestly fraternity of St. Peter in Littleton, Colorado. started going there and started frequenting there. And when was that? So actually, well, I was going to talk about the Diamond Brothers because they were my first introduction to sedevacantism, but maybe I won't.
No, yeah, go ahead.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'll just bleep it.
yeah. So that was so at the end of 2018, I was frequenting the Latin Mass as much as I could, and I was driving home to after Christmas break, and I was listening to I think Novus Ordo songs on my way home, and I saw one video that said why the new Mass is invalid. And I thought, whoa, what is that? And the clip art or whatever was like a clown priest or something. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what is this? So I started listening to it, and it was this certain group who shall not be named, but this certain group who puts out material against the Novus Ordo and Vatican II. And so that's when I started looking into it, and I was caught hook, line, and sinker by these guys. Mm-hmm. I was praying 15 decades a day. I thought the world was going to end tomorrow. I was telling everybody they needed to get baptized. And so then I started talking to Father Gregory here and Father Barry in Aurora. I started talking to them.
How did you know about them? Did you just go and research?
Just looked it up, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or actually, I think, yeah.
Were you looking like for sedevacantis priests? That's what you looked for, or?
I think actually one of the missionaries who introduced me to the Latin Mass, he had told me about the CMRI.
Oh.
So, and he regretted that because I started talking to them.
So he said, like, don't go there.
Yeah, something like that. And so that was in the back of my mind. But so I started talking, with the CMRI priest and then Father Barry, independent sedevacantist priest. And actually, after a few weeks, I just gave up on it because it was so difficult, especially this certain group maintaining that their lifestyle, what they require. Mm-hmm. It was too much. So I gave it up. But I knew in the back of my mind that there was something deeply wrong with Vatican II and the new Mass. Mm-hmm. I knew it, and I couldn't shake that. It wasn't resolved for me. So then, I just continued going to the Latin Mass on Sundays at this university parish where they did offer it there, and then going to Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And then in November of 2018, I started listening to SSPX apologetical material on YouTube and certain websites. And this was just kind of starting the traditionalist journey. It had started a little bit before then, but I really decided now and then to really delve into Vatican II to resolve that issue. And just researching all of my free time after school would be researching, reading. And I eventually came to the conclusion that Vatican II is certainly invalid. It's at least erroneous, So I decided that it has to be rejected wholesale, and that the new Mass is inadmissible, that it can't be attended, and that I resolved to never attend the new Mass again, because I knew it was wrong. I knew Vatican II and the new Mass were wrong. So, so then I got introduced to the SSPX, and I went to a Mass there, 2018, Christmas 2018, and so I started affiliating myself with them and their beliefs, their position. But questions were answered. I was still scouring the forums, trying to look for answers, and I was finally convinced that the new rite of episcopal consecration was at least doubtful, at worst invalid. So I stopped attending the Novus Ordo Latin Mass entirely. And so that summer was coming along, and so this is 2019 at this point, middle of 2019, and I still was not satisfied with their answers. But the stigma that sedevacantists have you don't go there, especially with the SSPX. You just don't go there. But their answers were so dissatisfactory to me that I just kept looking, and I thought, you know what, I'll give the Sedevacantist a chance to convince me. And because their position is contradictory, it makes no sense at all. And it's leaving me with more questions than answers. So I started listening to, I thought, what do I have to lose? I want to be Catholic, and I want the truth, so I'm going to keep looking because I don't think it's here. So I started listening to old episodes of What Catholics Believe with then Father Sanborn and Fathers Kelly and Jenkins. And so started listening to them, and it just made sense. What they were saying was so clear and concise, and it was answering my questions.
I do want to note here something that, it's interesting as I'm seeing it, because, I kind of hear you, and then I think, well, what would someone object, right, to what you're saying? And, one of the things that, people might say, well, what I want to note is the difference that there was between the journey to the Hare Krishna, which was something led rather by passions, just in a very sensitive way, not reason, but rather just impressions. And the difference between the other journey to traditional, to the real Catholic position, I would say, because it's difficult, it's actually quite against your senses. You know what I mean? It's like you don't like to go there, but you can't deny it because it's in your reason.
Yes.
And that's what I was telling you, how, God works in a way that it's very spiritual, truly spiritual, in the sense that it goes through your reason and your will, and you can't deny it. It's like once you see the truth as it happened, you just can't deny it. It's like, okay, it's right there. You know what I mean? And so even if everybody else tells you, okay, or a lot of people tell you this is wrong, once the truth has become evident, it's undeniable. It's evident. And there's such a big difference in those two journeys, because the one was denying truth to follow the senses, and the other one was denying senses to follow the truth.
Absolutely.
But so then what happened?
So then
you gave a chance to
the radical
traditional Catholics.
Sure. And it was one day after work, I was listening to a conference from Bishop Donald Sanborn about the crisis in the church. And he made the distinction between substantial and accidental changes. So he is arguing that accidental changes, changes in appearance only, have occurred throughout the history of the church, but never a substantial change to the doctrine, the discipline, the worship of the Catholic Church. And that Vatican II is a substantial change. It is a substantial rupture with the Catholic religion, and therefore it cannot proceed from the authority of Christ in the Church. And it was a light bulb moment. After why it was a light bulb moment, and I remember standing in my room, and I remember the exact moment that my intellect immediately perceived that I was receiving the truth, and I knew it. I knew this was the truth, and I was so happy. It was such a gratifying, I don't want to say sensation, but intellectually pleasurable to receive the truth. It's a wonderful gift. And I knew that I was in receiving God, by receiving this truth, that it was a wonderful gift of His grace and mercy. And I thought, now I know the truth, I can't go back. And I immediately begged God to help me because I knew how difficult this path was going to be, or at least my mind presented how difficult it would be. Now, I mean, sure, living a Catholic life is difficult, but at least it's simple. But I prayed to God to help me persevere in this truth and to overcome all the obstacles that would be in the way. And so that's, my journey. Now I'm here.
It's very recent that, I had forgotten how recent it is, but it's 2 years ago.
Yeah, so then I started coming here the 1st of August of 2019.
I had kind of a similar situation when I was I was always a traditional Catholic, and I always kind of knew what the situation was. But I was never put in a position where I had to decide between holding that the Holy See is vacant or not, because my dad was always kind of like, we'll go to where the sacraments are, and we don't care about these topics, which to a certain extent I think is a healthy position if you at least go to the place where you have the sacraments and the right doctrine. Because in Mexico the situation is quite complicated. But I never was put in that position, and I know what you're talking about, because when I started studying the encyclicals of the popes, those questions start coming, the ones that you had in the SSPX. Okay, how does that work? How do you explain this? What's going on? Well, John Paul II is a saint or not? I mean, what's the deal? And so it's a loss of peace. And, I kind of think of it like if you were standing in a very sharp, like in the corner of a precipice, or in a place where you don't have balance. And so you're kind of like in a state of violence, you could say. And then when I finally praying and studying, and I got to the same conclusion. I said, okay, well, this has to be, it cannot be the Pope. Because that cannot be the church. It cannot be that the church has a main authority that leads everyone to error.
No.
And when you get to that, the peace that you get is the peace of, okay, now I'm standing on firm ground. I'm not trying to figure out where to put my feet. It's like, okay, I know where it is.
Right. And there's still questions left unanswered, but at least there's not contradiction in this position, right?
Yeah.
In that, we don't believe that the Catholic magisterium can promulgate a perniciously erroneous or heretical council. We don't believe that a false and Protestant and sacrilegious liturgy can be promulgated by the authority of the church, the men who are supposed to have the authority of Christ. So,
well, and it goes all the way to God. Because, it's
right.
like, okay, I believe that the church cannot teach me error, the church cannot teach me heresy. And that means also that God would not give me a church that teaches me error and heresy. While the other option would be to say, here's God, he gives you a church, he tells you it's infallible, and then he lets the church fall into error. That doesn't make any sense. The church, the real church, has to keep always the true doctrine, the two sacraments, the true mass, and it's there. And that's what's important, to know that notion that the church is still there, and you have all those things, and it's always going to be infallible, and it's never going to teach error. And wherever it might be, as in your case, where you had to go through this journey of go back and forth, as in a certain way I did too. But you know that the church is going to be somewhere, and that you're going to find it. Pretty intense. Intense journey.
That was actually something I missed in that initial realization, was that it was also very consoling. Now, I knew how difficult this was going to be to maintain, but it was also very consoling because I perceived, or I realized that I was actually relieved that God wouldn't give his authority to someone who's persecuting me. Right? It's a dogma that we have to be submit ourselves to the Roman Pontiff for salvation. So if I submit myself to Francis, I'll go to hell for sure. And so it was really consoling to say, oh, okay, Christ wouldn't give this man authority, so.
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good story.
Yeah, it is.
I appreciate you sharing it with us. And
You're welcome.
I really hope, as I always say, it's a big sacrifice. As I always say, it's a big sacrifice to come out and share these things. But, I think about it, and you think, you consider, okay, well, I had these things in my life, and maybe this influence that I had in my life with other people. But these kind of things, it's something very good that you can do for other people too. And I'm glad that we're doing it, even whether it comes out or not. I'm glad that you're doing it, because it's something that actually, who knows if maybe there's a guy in those kind of movements or in that kind of journey, and they'll see that and be like, understand where they're at and where they can go. I do have to ask you the 3 questions that I ask everyone.
Sure.
And we're cheating because I told him beforehand. But the first question would be, what was the greatest challenge? Like in all this journey, what was the hardest thing, the most difficult moment, the most difficult thing that you had to deal with?
Throughout the entire journey.
Yeah, like let's say since the 15 years old until the moment that you found the faith.
I would say for me personally, it'd be overcoming human respect, overcoming what people think of your views,
Hmm.
not being afraid of being right, not being apologetic of being right. And we see, we seem like the extremists because of our views are old fashioned and they're outdated. We're the most rational people in society because we're trying to live the natural law and the positive divine law, And so the world is going to make you think that you're crazy, and the devil is going to tempt you that you're crazy, you're an extremist, and you're a nut. But you're not. If you're trying to live an upright and moral life and to believe the doctrines that are necessary for salvation, then everyone else is crazy who's not doing that. So don't be afraid of what anyone will think. Don't be afraid of backlash. We should take inspiration from the martyrs to give up everything for this truth. It's worth everything. It's just difficult to see in the modern world because we're inundated and bombarded by filth constantly. It's hard to stay afloat and to live in the higher part of the soul to see eternal truths. But it actually wasn't very difficult for me to leave my old life. It wasn't difficult for me to stop doing drugs or anything like that because of the thirst for truth and goodness and beauty. So yeah.
What would be the greatest blessing? The most beautiful thing. And everybody says their Catholic faith righteously.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I won't let you say your Catholic faith because that's taken for granted. Let's think of what would be the next blessing.
The freedom. I'd say true liberty to not be a slave of those passions that I once was. That is such a empty, meaningless existence where I was. And so the truth, the Catholic faith is a starting point. And that enables you, if you believe those truths, that enables you to change your life and to, if you really want happiness and joy and peace, that it will be found here. And that is in an upright life where your passions are obedient to your will, and your will is obedient to reason, and reason is obedient to God. And it's this wonderful hierarchy that you will not get without this faith. That peace of soul that you get from a good conscience, certainly that.
And what would be, if there was some advice that you could give to everyone from teenagers, young people, adults, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, especially to the young men, that a life of virtue is, what do I want to say? A life of virtue will bring you everything that you need and want. The world, modern society, the devil, they're going to try to portray to you that chasing after girls, chasing after money, chasing after material goods, drugs, alcohol, that is going to fill you, that will make you happy, that will give you everything you need. It will not. It will not. You will be, if you indulge those passions and those desires, you will be as empty as ever, and it will never satiate you. And the more you try to fill that void that you have in your heart with those superfluous goods, that it will get worse and worse and will get emptier and deeper. And the only way that void that is placed in your heart for happiness and love and joy and fulfillment, that's placed there by God. So you search after him. And the only way to fill that is through his love, right? And his goodness and beauty and truth. It will only be filled by that. So you can chase after all of those things. It will never be enough. And you think that all of those sense gratifications are very pleasurable, but that is on the most basic level. It doesn't transcend into the deeper goods and joy, pleasures of life, and that is in the soul. And so for the young men to practice virtue, it's difficult. Like I said, in the modern world, because we have no examples really. But you will find a great deal of fulfillment and pleasure in living a good life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, Father. Yeah, I'm glad I did.
Yeah, it was the first time that we've used this, and it worked out really well.
Yeah.
But it's just a few days before you travel overseas, and I might not see you again for a couple of years. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that we did this, and I'm glad that you shared your story. And as always, we would like to encourage everyone watching it to keep us in your prayers. Both of us, because we have found the truth and we're in the right place, but we always have to persevere. And that is a good benefit from doing this, that we ask other people to help us persevere and help each other. We all pray for each other so that we may persevere in this goodness and happiness that we have found. So this was our friend calling here for Back to the Faith, and I am your host, Father Carlos Cepeda, and you're watching The Catholic Wire. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you for listening to The Catholic Wire. If you have found this show helpful, please say a prayer for all our collaborators. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels and share with your friends. For questions and comments, you may contact us at thecatholicwire.org.